Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Franchise Tagged podcast. Starting off your week of football on this fine Thursday afternoon. Kicking off week 9, we're going to look back at our pick'ems as we always do. We had a little bit of a bounce back, you know, as
Well, don't
opposed to
call it a
last
comeback. We've
week.
been here all year.
We were doing
At
very
least I
well
have.
until last week, and then we had a really rough time of it last week. And this
Yeah.
week, big bounce back for us. For me, I went 11-5. My lock hit as well, and that brings my overall record to 70-52. So a very positive record, I might add.
Yep. Just want to point out before we get to yours, you had the same record in your preseason, uh, just not the same games picked, obviously. But for my week, I went 12-4, and that brings my full season ranking up to 78 wins, 44 losses. My lock this week on the Ravens over Cardinals won, so 5-3 in the lock category.
I don't know if I mentioned my record in the lock category, but I am 6-2. But you are killing it on the overall rankings.
Yeah, I just can't pick the right teams to win consistently.
I the Eagles, man, though that lock was scary for me. So I work Sundays, and so I occasionally look at the scores as I'm like I'll pull up my phone, look at the scores real quick, and then get back to working. And I saw the Eagles were losing at first, and I was like, no biggie, they'll come back. Then it was halftime, and they had I think they had scored by halftime, but they weren't winning. And I was like,
Yeah, they did a pretty crazy comeback.
they'll come back, no biggie. And then I was right, they did. But it was a little nerve wracking. The Ravens just, I mean, Gus Edwards 3 touchdown day. You know, Lamar had himself a decent little performance. Safe. We'll call it a safe performance.
Safe.
It wasn't like a stellar performance, but I feel like every other week is Lamar popping off, and the other weeks is just let's get the running backs touchdowns. It was Justice Hill one week, it's Gus Edwards last week, and who knows who it's going to be in the future.
The Cowboys broke our hearts, unfortunately, by a landslide to shatter our hopes and dreams and make Sean McVay, with his new baby, really seem inadequate. Just throw in the new baby in there. Throw him under the bus. He's why. He couldn't. He had sleepless nights. Clearly, why they lost. Do we want to get into it?
What are we getting into?
The fact that so many streaks for Patrick Mahomes have been shattered by a big loss um, to the Broncos there. I saw a thing that it's the first time in like 30 games where he's lost by double digit like score, which is like crazy. Um, or it might even be longer than that. I can't remember the specific stat, but basically, I hated watching that game, and I don't want to talk about
Yeah,
it.
that was a rough one. I didn't watch too much of it, but can we blame it on the flu? Can we do that? Are we allowed to? I would like to.
It's
I'd like to put it on anything other than the Broncos actually being good. So
yeah.
I'm gonna
Let's
do
not give
that.
the Broncos any credit, despite the fact that Russell's been playing actually decent.
Yeah, the offense has been
Like,
clicking. It's just the
yeah, I mean,
defense sucks.
yeah. Let's be honest. The Broncos kind of flipped the script where they were like, oh, last season where they just kept themselves in games for very long time, for in a 9-10 loss on Thursday Night Football or whatever the
Yeah,
stupid
yeah,
scores
yeah.
were. And now they're like, oh, well, we're actually going to be playing great, except we don't know how to
We're
play
actually going to be
defense
losing
anymore.
38-35 this
And
year.
like Pat Sertan's kind of been having a rough year,
Hmm.
kind of seeing some low lights of Pat Sertan. So yeah, it's a interesting change that happened with the coaching change there.
Speaking of
But it's
QB
not like
stump,
Russ did much.
yeah. Speaking of QB stumbling, we also saw Brock Purdy stumble a little bit and CJ Stroud. And with Purdy, I'm kind of wondering if he has a concussion because I don't know if you saw
Yep.
that where he went on the tush push last or 2 weeks ago in week 7 and he was really good until then, and then after
Yeah.
that he sucked. And that was why they lost in week 7. And then he just kind of looked a little out of it this week. So, or this past
Yeah.
week. So I'm
The stats in the game after that tush push on in week 7. After that tush push, which was he had no concussion symptoms until the play, so we have no definitive like, oh, he got concussed on this play. But that tush push is kind of what everyone points to as this is probably it. After that play, he went 2 for 6 and threw 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
So if you factor in that kind of performance as like the baseline for concussed Purdy and you believe that he's concussed, I mean, he bounced back from that, but it was a rough game for the Niners overall trying to get anything going.
Yeah, and I'm also not gonna say that Debo would solve everything, but if he was back in the lineup, I feel like their receivers would be a little bit stronger because Ayuk wouldn't be one on one with the CB1s, and that's something we've kind of touched on in the past, where when a
Mm-hmm.
wide receiver one's out, the receiving game struggles. No matter how dominant the wide receiver two normally is, they just kind of take a step back.
Yeah, unless
And
you're the Raiders, then you just struggle overall.
Jesus
But
Christ, poor
let's not jump
Devontae,
to
man.
there yet. Let's not jump there yet.
Yeah,
I want to shout out Joe Burrow because off the bye week, immediate just like back to true form Joe Burrow. Only 4 incompletions on the entire day, passed 32 times, completed 28, 280 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
yep,
Pretty good game for something that was being questioned on our pick'ems on who might be winning that matchup. You picked wrong, I picked right. I
yeah.
will applaud that over you for
Yeah,
the moment.
I will say I expected Purdy to do a little bit better, but I also expected Burrow to do a little bit worse. I think
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say he's fully back, but I do think he's doing a lot better. And it's gonna be interesting to watch him the rest of the season and this week especially with a matchup with the Bills, where who knows what's gonna happen in that one as well. We've got a lot of really close matchups this week, but we'll get into that later. The Jets and Giants game, if you want to get into that punt fest. If you like
Oh
punts,
my
you loved
god.
that game. And
Yeah, you like special teams, buddy?
I like punts just as much as the next guy, but man, that was a lot, you know.
That
15
was a just horrendous thing to watch. And then the fact that it goes into overtime is like, oh great, we get to suffer more.
yeah. 15 first half punts, 24 overall total punts, and Thomas Morstead won Theo Ash's Little Caesars Player of the Week award. If you follow Theo Ash at all,
In
he
the
has
world.
a Little Caesars Player of the Week award where once a week, every week, he picks a player that he gives this award to, and if the player reaches out, he will buy them a Little Caesars pizza. So he gave it to Thomas Morstead this week, and I thought that was pretty good. He did have some really good punts. He was keeping the Jets in that game with the with his punts.
Yeah.
And then the
Mm.
last thing I've just got to say, man, we talked about it last week. It was the first thing in our title last week. But man, the refs continue to disappoint and they continue to just screw everything up. And I saw a lot of stuff about the Steelers game where they called the guard offsides and it was really a Jaguars player that was offsides. And I looked at that and I don't think that Jaguars player was offsides enough to be called. Like I think it was that his arm was hovering and it was hovering
Mhm.
just past the nose of the football. And so they were like, no, you should call him offsides. But with how offensive lines need to be lined up, the guard was not in the right position. So I also see it from there. But on a game altering call where both teams were kind of not doing the right thing, why call
What
it?
was the play call? Was that like a QB
It was a field
something
goal.
like push? Oh my
It was
god.
a field goal.
I just saw the like stills of it as well. And I
Yep.
thought the same thing. But
Yep.
wow, on a scoring
Yep.
attempt.
And I mean, Boswell then got pushed back for the penalty and missed the kick, and they lost the game. Shout out Jags. I'm so glad you beat the Steelers, but it's a shame that it had to be like that. I wish it was just a
Yeah.
clobbering and inability to score on offense like we've seen from the Steelers in the past.
Yeah, if we want to stay on the topic of bad refereeing, start of the Sunday night football game, uh, the Chargers Bears, Tyson Bagent throws what would be an immediate house call on that first play, and like they said there was no whistle, but if you are a player and you catch a ball and all you see is green grass ahead of you and the end zone, you're not just gonna stop because someone's like yelling or
Yeah.
like you got all that going. You're just gonna beeline it. So there had to have been a whistle. There's no way that there's just
Or a
no
ref making a
whistles,
motion or something, or maybe Mooney just thought he was
something.
down because he knew there was contact, but in the rule book he's not supposed to be down, and then they ended up calling him down after the fact, and I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, there were several plays during that entire game. Your cat's joining the frame. There were several several plays throughout that entire game that were bad calls by the refs. They blew Kmet down, and he
Hmm.
was for sure. He was like half a sec, or it was like a second and a half, and he was still pushing. It's not like he was
Yeah.
completely stood up and just still. He was pushing, and then right before they blew him dead, he got out of the tackle, and then they blew him down, and
Yeah.
that would
That
have been a
was
touchdown. And just to be clear, I'm not saying the Bears would have won that game. I still don't think they would
no. It's
have.
just
But
it
it's just
was.
like, man, come on, make it a closer game.
Yeah. It's the same as that like Steelers Jags, where okay, we want the Jags to win, but do we want them to win like that? And like while we, Bears Chargers, we don't want the Bears to win because a couple calls went against them, but like those couple of calls that go against them hurt them enough where it could have been a closer matchup. It could have been less of like go out there and throw it deep and here's a bunch of screens because it's late in the game. Like
Yeah,
it just would have been more entertaining. And it sucks early on in the game that
it's
that was
a,
happening.
it's a
It's not even
momentum
like
killer, and
yeah,
momentum early in the game is so easy to grab, and when you have it, that's what leads to runaway games. And the Bears would have had it with a couple of those plays going their right way. But again, I still, even if everything was called perfectly, I don't think the Bears win that game regardless. It just would have been a closer box score.
yeah,
And I know I Bears Twitter was in a big ol' unhappy mess about that
kerfuffle.
one. Yeah, I follow a guy named Deeks View. He's really good on Twitter. He is a big Bears fan, but also like understands that the Bears kind of suck. And so his perspective is really nice to have on my feed, but it also leads to a lot of other Bears fans being on my feed. And I I saw a lot of unhappiness from them about that game. But he agreed with my take, or I mean, we had the same take that it wouldn't have won them the game. It just would have been nicer to see a better called game. And I think that's the way to think about it. You've got Lions on here. The
Yeah,
play where is it Josh Reynolds?
yeah.
He
The
was he got the ball ripped out, but he was possibly down, but possibly not. But they couldn't tell, and so the refs called it a fumble
Oh,
because
Craig Reynolds, the
Craig
running back. I
Reynolds.
thought you were
Okay,
gonna reference the first fumble, but no, Craig
no.
Reynolds is the running back.
Okay. See, I was confused. I don't know the Lions roster like that, so I was like, "Damn, they just got Josh Reynolds lining up at running back here."
He just got him lining up out back. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like, man, they only
and
have Jameer Gibbs. Weird.
the view that they showed on the broadcast shows like okay, it is ripped out and his body is not touching the ground, but the other views they show his legs very close to the ground, and then the legs view is obstructed.
The
And on replay, it's not going to get overturned,
right.
but it
That's
is strange that he reached down and ripped it out of the pile, and the pile had been like established. Like there's a
yeah.
pile on the ground for a couple of seconds, and then you see the ball fly up, and it's like, should that have been called the fumble and then reviewed to see if it wasn't, or should it have been not called a fumble and reviewed to see if it was?
The thing is, though, I always like when I'm watching games, I always think that turnovers should be called turnovers, even if they're not for sure like a turnover, because then it's
Yeah,
automatically reviewed.
yeah,
And
it's
I'll
going to be
always take an
reviewed.
automatic review over, maybe the coach thinks that it happened this way, maybe they challenge it, but maybe they don't. So it's just going to
Yeah,
go with what the refs call. And so I'll always err on the side of caution with that, where
yeah.
I'm
I
like,
like I like it being reviewed after the fact, not like, oh, they didn't. It was a fumble, but they didn't call it. Like,
yeah. And then the
but in this
offense just
case,
runs up and snaps it.
with how refs act about, things with reviews, they're like, oh, well, there's not enough evidence to over. Like, it's like they have that already bias to the call they already made
Right. And that's the thing
instead
is
of just
they
looking
can't.
at it clearly.
Well, that's the thing. They
Like,
can't. They can.
yeah,
If something's called on the field, they have to see something clear and obvious to overturn it.
hmm,
And that's why if they had called him down, they wouldn't have been able to overturn it and say that he fumbled it.
hmm,
But since they called it a fumble, they couldn't overturn it because there was nothing
yeah,
clear and obvious. The pile was entirely obstructed. So it's just tough because we won't ever know because there was no clear camera angle. Because if there was,
yeah.
then they would have
I feel
confirmed
like
or overturned the call.
they showed two camera angles, and I feel like there should be a way to like sync up the footage to show both angles at the same time. Because at one you see a knee go down, and so you're like, okay, that's when the play ends. And then they show the other, and you can't see his legs at all. So it's like, how do we not have a method to piece these two together?
Yeah,
On the other side of the backfield for the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs popped off.
they finally gave him a workload, and
Yeah,
he proved why they took him in the first round.
pretty much. Yeah.
I
I won't stick on that too much as we've talked a lot about games thus far.
yeah
Now it's time to get into some heartbreaking injuries and then the trade deadline moves.
yeah those trade deadline moves I'm really looking forward to. But the first injury is Big Kirko. Kirko Chains, the man, the myth, the legend. He tore his Achilles, done for the season. There's some speculation that he's not going to be around in the NFL after this. And if that's the case, I've never been a huge Kirk Cousins fan, but I've always kind of respected that he's an efficient passer who gets the job done. And if he just goes out on an Achilles injury, I mean, that's not the way you want to see anybody go out.
Yeah,
And especially somebody like Kirk Cousins who hasn't missed games due to injury in the past. Like he just hasn't.
yeah.
And
He plays through so much. He's like, no
toughness
matter how
is
much pain
something.
there is, he's playing.
Yeah. So shout out Big Kirko. I hope he comes back next season and plays. But I would also understand if he retired after that
Hmm.
because he is 35, which isn't old, but it's getting up there in football years. And
Yeah, it's you're seeing the years when your contract starts waning, and you're more of that bridge guy. And I mean, I was vehemently against the Vikings trading away Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins isn't a top 10 quarterback, but he's always a top like 16.
yeah, he's not a bottom
And
10 either. He's
yeah,
always in the middle of the pack.
he like statistically he rises to being way above that middle of the pack, but like talent wise, when you're like, oh, what do I build my franchise around? It's he's gonna be landing in that middle of the pack,
Yeah.
and it's really just like disheartening to see Kirk Cousins, who's like a genuinely, he seems like super genuine, super nice, like the most um Minnesota white guy ever. um and if this is like the last time he suits up for the Vikings, that'd be a heartbreaker for Vikings fans. And if it's the last time he suits up in general, that's just like the a big loss for football.
So further in the injuries, Matt Stafford, Kenny Pickett, and Tyrod Taylor are all banged up. Stafford, you have info on, not me. So
Yeah,
I'll let you talk about
Stafford
that.
mid game left with the injury to his throwing hand, and it's I believe hold on, it's a UCL. I almost said PCL, and I was like, that's the completely wrong part of the body.
Yeah.
It's a UCL sprain, and he's considered day to day, so we could see him, but I wouldn't be surprised with them maybe taking it easy on him and pulling him from a game early if it gets out of hand. It's the Packers, so there's a chance that they come out and win, but I don't know how you want to trust a injured thumb and making it worse at all.
Yeah.
So day
They
to day for that.
To be fair though, they've got Brett Rippon as their backup, and then third string is
Yeah,
Stetson
that's the
Bennett, who's
main.
not with the team. So there's no QB3. There's no good backup. I mean, get Bryce Perkins back
Hmm.
and throw him out there because I'd love to see some Bryce Perkins action.
Yeah,
But
let's get Bryce Perkins back in the field on the field rather.
Kenny Pickett also banged up this week, though he says he's playing Thursday. That is words straight from Kenny Pickett's mouth, not from team officials, not from the front office, not from the injury report. That is Kenny Pickett saying he's playing Thursday, 100%. So do with that information what you will. I think he will play. I don't think he'd say that and not be playing, but it's happened before where players have said, yeah, I feel 100%, and then they're out. And then Tyrod is banged up as well, and they've got Tommy DeVito, who on ESPN Fantasy is an unknown player. And I'm sure he's there by now, but during the week it said that an unknown player had a rushing touchdown or had rushing yards, whatever it was that he had.
Yeah. Only known thing for Tyrod Taylor is that he suffered a rib injury and stayed overnight at the hospital. Um, I didn't see anything. I wonder, is this when Daniel Jones returns? Because I've been seeing that he was trending towards being good. You didn't have info on that immediately.
I don't. I can find it though.
For CBS, he's missed the previous 3 weeks, but is good to go for week 9.
Per NBC, he says he is cleared and ready to play on Sunday. So we'll probably just see Danny Dimes go out there. Dude, poor Tyrod. I feel so bad for Tyrod Taylor, who just every time it seems like he's getting his shot, injury, or
Mm-hmm.
whether it's accidental or the Chargers coaching staff or medical staff. Sorry, not coaching staff.
Some
Brandon Staley did not
malpractice.
stab him.
Yeah.
The medical staff
I wouldn't be
accidentally
surprised if
puncturing his
Bailey
lung.
did it on purpose. He's like, I need this rookie out there.
Yeah, but that's kind of it for the injury news, right? Kirko Chains and then those other 3 quarterbacks. I don't think there's anything else big. 49ers going on bye, so we'll probably see Debo after the bye week. On to the trade deadline. Let's get into that real quick. I've had some technical difficulties, so this is the 3rd time we're doing this, but we'll get through it pretty quick. Leonard Williams yesterday. This is Monday, I guess. Yesterday from when we're recording this. Monday, obviously, is the day it happened. Got traded to the Seahawks for a 2nd and a 5th, as well as the Giants covering his entire salary aside from the vet minimum that the Seahawks have to pay him, which is under $650K. So the Seahawks got a very cheap defensive lineman who has shown very good flashes in the past of being good, and I like the deal for them.
Yeah, the contract allocation to the Giants is kind of a big part of that, and he's a rental. He would need to be extended. So we'll see how any of that goes because it's not like the free agent period where there'll be a trade and Tyreek Hill is immediately signed and extended for this amount of money.
I think the Seahawks are probably going to wait on making an extension or offering an extension to him until they've seen him play, because the Giants have just kind of struggled in all facets. Offense has sucked, defense has sucked. They've just not been good. So I think they want to see how he does with a functional team and a functional coaching staff. And if he gets back to form with what he did to earn his 3-year, $63 million extension that he signed with the Giants, then we'll probably see him get extended by the Seahawks and become an anchor on the D-line. But if he continues to struggle, then, oh well, he was a rental. And they're already looking good, so I don't hate them getting a cheap rental for a year, despite the draft picks.
It's a good win. So worth it for them a lot more than it is worth it for the Giants.
Yeah.
They just managed to squeak out a value from an overpaid D-line that they are just like blowing up their team for.
Mm-hmm. The next trade that we're going to talk about is Josh Dobbs and a conditional 7th-round pick being traded to the Vikings post Kirk Cousins injury. I like this deal for all 3 parties. I like it for the Vikings, I like it for the Cardinals, and I like it for Josh Dobbs. Because the Cardinals, it's a great move because you're not going to be using Josh Dobbs for the full season. Kyler is trending to return soon. So maybe you run with Clayton Tune for 1 week and then Kyler gets in. And at 1-7, dropping a week is not going to kill you. You're not going to go undefeated the rest of the season. You're probably not making playoffs this year, but you still want to win a couple games and prove that you're a competent team, right? Jonathan Gannon needs to keep his job and he needs to win some games to do that. So when Kyler comes back, they do need to win games, but until then, you're okay rocking with Clayton Tune and dropping a couple games and getting what you can for Josh Dobbs. On the flip side, for the Vikings, you're getting a quarterback who has proven that he is not terrible. Josh Dobbs is not an all-star quarterback. He's not perfect, but he's kept the Cardinals in a lot of games that they were not supposed to be in at all. He's kind of the Geno Smith of this year, in the fact that he was completely written off and they were like, okay, this team is going to get blown out. They're never going to score any points and they're going to be 0-17. And he comes in and keeps them in a lot of games. And I think the defense is what's dropping them from a lot of games. I don't think he's the problem in Arizona. The other thing I like about it is for Josh Dobbs, who would not be retaining the starting job when Kyler comes back in 1 or 2 weeks. And so he'd just be relegated to a bench role after proving that he can be a decent starter in the league. and so he gets another shot to start when at the start of the season he was just going to be a backup, and so I like it for all parties. I like the Cardinals getting some capital for a player that they're not going to use. I like the Vikings getting a player that they can use when they've got a big injury to their starter, and I like Josh Dobbs getting another chance to start when he wouldn't have it otherwise.
Yeah, so this way for Josh Dobbs, he's looking at possibly starting a full season for the first time in his career. If he plays well for the Vikings and doesn't, get benched for their next guy up.
Jaron Hall.
Uh, yeah, the name off the top of my head, but it'll be interesting because it's really his best opportunity he's had thus far, and if he makes the most of it, he could be primed to actually get a bigger contract to be a backup somewhere, or be a little bridge starter. So we'll see where that takes him, that veteran bridge role.
Yeah, and I do like what Josh Dobbs has done this thus far. I think that he's been fine. I had said that I don't think he's the problem in Arizona, and I will stand by that. I think he's capable. And I know there's a lot of hype around Jaron Hall where people are saying that he's actually pretty good coming out of BYU. He won over the fans of Zach Wilson at BYU. When he left, everybody was like, oh, we're going to suck. And then they kind of changed and they were like, actually, this Jaron Hall kid is pretty good. And I don't know if he's going to do the same in Minnesota, but I could definitely see it happening. But
Interesting enough, news as of 5, the Vikings plan to start Jaron Hall despite the trade for Dobbs. So it could be that Dobbs there just to be the backup to Hall, which getting a backup for that cost isn't exactly a big cost either.
I'm not so sure that that's a permanent thing and more just a, hey, let's throw him out there and see what he's got. Plus, he knows the system a little bit better than Josh Dobbs does. Obviously, this would be a very short week for Dobbs to start on. So it might be him
Yeah.
learning the system for a week and getting comfortable with his receivers, maybe waiting until Justin Jefferson comes back to put him out there. I don't know. Could be any number of things. I still like the trade
Yeah, a lot of
regardless.
quarterback stuff happened definitely there. They could start the young guy. They could go with the vet. It might just be like, oh, he's getting this 1 week, and then we're moving on to job. Could be
Yeah.
never gets the starting chance.
Yeah. Then we've got Vikings offensive guard Ezra Cleveland going to the Jags for the 6th-round pick from Carolina. And that's offensive line move. Cool. I know that
Get some depth.
I know that Doug Peterson was happy about the move. He was live on one of the shows.
Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
Pat McAfee's.
And he was excited about it. So obviously that's always good news when your coach is excited about an acquisition, especially on the O-line. And then we've got the 49ers, not the 49ers. Yes, the 49ers, but also not the 49ers. That's not what I meant to say. The Commanders, that's the one. Cleaning house on the D-line, getting rid of Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Montez Sweat for a 2nd-round pick from the Bears and Chase Young for a 3rd from the Niners. And I don't know which trade I like more. I think that Chase Young is good value, but also he's had injury issues and hasn't looked himself in recent years. So the 49ers are kind of gambling on him returning to form, which he's been doing this season, but they're also gambling on him staying healthy, which the 49ers have a very bad history of players not staying healthy. So I don't know if I love the trade to the 49ers. But at the same time, a 3rd-round pick from a team that's going to be a playoff team is a much cheaper price than a 2nd-round pick from a team that's probably going to be picking in the top 5. So I think the consistency of Montez Sweat is what the Bears need, and the kind of possibility of what Chase Young can be for the Niners is definitely worth that late 3rd-round pick. I actually like both trades for the teams that got the players, and I hate both trades for the Commanders because I feel like they just shipped off both their starting edge rushers for pennies.
Yeah, basically the Bears trade specifically. That's the 2nd-rounder from the Panthers, so it's not even the Bears' own. It'd be interesting to see, like, oh, we think we're gonna do better than like the Panthers on themselves and not trade away their own pick and trade away the the freebie one that they have from the move up last season in the
Yeah.
draft. And I mean, I saw it float around. I'm sure everyone sees it by the time this video comes out on Thursday. But when sacks versus the Bears defense sacks, same number, same number so far this season. The Bears desperately need that, addition, and here it comes. Here's the big defense line. Now the thing that's left is the extension part of that, but we'll see where that goes. Um, and it's not like free agency where you're just gonna extend them immediately after the trade. And then for the Chase Young, pissed. Not for either team involved, but because of the Lions. It felt like the entire season there'd been like rumblings, rumors that like Chase Young is on the trade block, and the Lions should go get him. He's Young with Aiden Hutchinson, and that's a pretty good combo when you have the double percentage that Aiden Hutchinson gets, and you free up a lot more. Like, granted, 3-6 on one drive against the Raiders, it's the Raiders. It's not going to be the most consistent pressure, especially a obvious passing situation for the Raiders. So that's not like that's our every week. That's not our week to week. Just because you saw it time. The the fact that we could have gotten depth, and albeit it's like an injury prone depth, I guess, but we would allow ourselves to have more depth because if we lose Hutchinson to an injury for a couple weeks, the RB line is going to have nothing going for it. He's the most double teamed player out of edges, feel like nonstop, always three in that category, and we never actually produce off of it. He's the one getting pressures, and he's the one that's the focus point. You kind of make people, defenses, offenses, have to split on that, open it a lot up. That is a huge factor in this being a huge win in the 49ers because the 49ers, they have Nick Bosa. So they're in the same boat where, yeah, they have Nick Bosa and they have other edges and they have a good D line in general compared to the Lions where it's like a lesser D line but good player. Um, the Niners get this off of a compensatory third round pick. Compensatories are the ones the league gives out whenever a minority coach or player leaves the organization. Um, the compensatories are at the end of the round. So this could basically be ruled as a fourth round pick. And you're telling me that 30 other teams in the NFL didn't think Chase Young was worth a third round pick is kind of crazy to me. So massive ups to Niners in this trade. Massive ups to the Bears on Montez Sweat. But wow, what are the Commanders just like what's going on? They can't defend to give Sam Howell any time, and now they just put themselves in the running for Caleb Williams. So I don't know what the plan here is.
Yeah. Donovan, moving off those trades, obviously they're the kind of biggest ones here, where it's just two big name players getting shipped out. Donovan Peoples-Jones to the Lions for a 6th-round pick. That's a steal. He hasn't really produced too much this year, I don't think. But let me pull up his
I'm
Pro Football
also
Reference
pulling
page.
stats.
Yeah, he hasn't eclipsed 50 yards this year. No touchdowns yet. But he's a solid receiver. He's been solid in the past for Cleveland. Last year he had over 800 yards and 3 touchdowns. And with what's his name? Marvin Jones?
Massage. Oh, Marvin Jones.
With wow. With Marvin Jones stepping away, obviously due to his stuff,
Personal
they could
matters, yeah.
they could use some depth at receiver, which they just got good depth, not just like, oh, that guy's a good 6th stringer. No, like they got a guy that can come in and actually make an impact for them, and I think he will. And then, I mean, that's your team. You can continue to talk about that if you would like.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher to me. I mean, I get the trade with the departure of Marvin Jones, but I don't get why there still wasn't a defensive player targeted because we lost we've lost so many players, first off, on defense, but we lost for a week against the Seahawks. Our like into the season would be our third string uh corner and was currently our starting corner. So that's rough. But we lost the starting corner to injury for that 1 week, and we looked horrendous defending anything because our next guys up aren't great. So if we were to lose Hutch for an injury, we're not great on the D line either. Our linebacking core has a lot of depth, so I see that our safeties as well. That's not very able to manage with two safeties hurt. Uh, Brian Branch is back, although so just the one, but you have so little depth at the corner position specifically because you've lost so many corners already, and you don't go and get at least one player because it doesn't need to be a top guy. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a good value pickup for the sixth round pick. Um, but I don't see the value in not picking up depth in the other positions where I think we need it more than wide receiver.
And speaking of some DB depth, Rasul Douglas from the Packers went to the Bills for a third round pick. It was Rasul and a fifth round pick for a third round pick from the Bills. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's been pretty decent.
Yeah,
Nothing
he's been
crazy, but
pretty good. I've seen a lot of Packers fans akin to your uh, situation with what team was it you were saying? The Bears. With you seeing a lot of Bears in your timeline, a lot
yeah.
of Packers fans are very upset that Rasul Douglas was allowed to leave, and even more so that he was traded for a third round with a fifth. But like allowing him to even seek a trade was kind of crazy.
Yeah, 10 picks over his career with the Packers, and that's over 3 seasons. So, again, not crazy production, but I mean, for that cheap, I mean, it is a third round pick, but it's Rasul in a fifth. So I mean, the value of that pick is more like you're giving up a fourth round pick. So
Yeah,
you're trading a fourth rounder for a corner who can come in and be good for y'all. And the Bills, obviously, I mean, every team needs depth at certain positions, and the Bills could use some help on defense, so they bring in a solid defender.
finish up on Rasul. 2 seasons ago, with his first year in Green Bay, he allowed a 44.5 QBR when targeted, and it's only gotten worse since. But at the same time, it's this past season has been his worst, so I see the need to move off of him now. But I mean, he's overall been good, so half of the season goes by and they ship him off. It's I see why there is a you know distaste in Packers fans' mouths.
Yeah. The other thing I want to talk about the trade deadline is just some moves that didn't happen, which is any Broncos players. They didn't move off of anybody. And then there was a lot of buzz around about Patriots players getting traded. They've got a couple guys coming up for contracts. Josh Uche was the big name that came up that they were thinking about moving, and nothing was really close to a deal. Josh Uche and Zeke as well. There were some calls about Zeke, but
Yeah, Zeke was a
it
wild one.
seemed like nobody was willing to pay anything for these players. They were just expecting to be like the trades we saw
Yeah,
earlier this year with the
here I'll give
player
you
and a seventh for a sixth, and it was like
Yeah,
the Patriots wanted some decent value, maybe a second or third round pick for Yush and whatever for Zeke, and teams just weren't willing to pay it. So that was a little bit surprising. And then no big receiver moves, and Devontae Adams was a name that was floated around a lot as hinting at being traded, not just because oh,
he
big
doesn't want
receiver,
to be
let's
there.
trade him, but he actually reportedly asked if there was any chance they would trade him, and they said no. And this was a few weeks ago. And then last night happened, and there was just like, okay, there is a rift now because Jimmy G sucks so much that Devontae is
I
just
mean,
miserable.
how many throws were over his head? Like there was at least three.
He should have had 2 touchdowns on the night easily
Hmm.
if Jimmy G could throw accurately, but he can't. And the reason I think that people expected Devontae to want to be out, and the reason he does want to be out, is because he went to Vegas to play with Derek Carr, his college teammate. That's why he went. He didn't go because he thinks Vegas is great or he thinks the Raiders are next up or anything like that. He went there to play with
Yeah,
Derek Carr, and they got rid of him after one season. So I just don't see him wanting to stick around there. And the report that I saw about him asking for a trade wasn't like he was saying, "Hey, trade me." It was like, "Hey, what do you think about this? Because I'm not happy here." And they said,
Yeah.
no. And he was like, "Okay, thought I'd ask." So it was like it didn't seem like it was a demand or like a true like I need to be out of here. More like a if you're thinking about it, I'm for it. You know, like if you're on the fence, I'll push you towards trading me, something like that. And I think that a trade could have happened for him, but I think the asking price would have been too high as well.
It's a major like contract that they picked up with him. They clearly don't want him gone, but he does. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a certain rift that seems to be formed every time a well, let's just I'll steer clear of that conversation. I'm just going to not mention a certain Raiders head coach seeming to not make players happy. Uh, anyways, I think we can safely move on to our bingo updates, which not much updates here. Again, we have a lot of end of year ones, but I am leaning a lot towards having ones be less and less likely. So I'll go over my complete misses and then get into the one highlight on my little sheet here. Uh, top tight end being Dallas Goddard. He had a good National Tight Ends Day. Uh, he's still not there. It's a long hike up from that. DJ Chark having over 1,000 yards probably isn't going to happen given the fact that currently on the year he is sitting at a whopping 220. We're midway through the year. That's what week 8 is to me still. It's still midway
it's
despite
essentially
having an extra
midway.
day. Yeah. Um, Another update is Gronk's TD being broken because, oh my god, the absolute fact. Travis Kelsey would have to go absolute nutso on every defense he played for the rest of the year. Uh, Erase that. And the highlight of my board is a Will Levis starts 3+ games after that performance, which we didn't really
No,
touch
we
on.
didn't touch on it at all. I
The
forgot to write it
mailman went
down. But
crazy.
yeah, he popped off. He and D Hop connected a few times for some
For
touchdowns. It was
real.
4 catches, 3 touchdowns for D Hop. And I don't think Tannehill's touching the field again this year. I'll be 100% honest. I think that Will Levis is better than I thought he was. And I think a lot of it is just the Titans having a good running system where they take a lot of attention off the pass game, hand the ball to Derrick Henry,
And
and if
hit you
they've
over the top.
yeah, and then if they've got a quarterback who can launch it, and they've got D Hop who's a big deep threat, they're gonna have him one on one a lot. And if that happens, throw it to him, see what happens. And that's exactly what Will Levis did, and they got 3 touchdowns out of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think teams will start to key in on it a little bit more if it happens again this week. But
Yeah. I think it's definitely one of those things where, oh, like, you know, a certain Bears quarterback named Badgett showed up out of nowhere, did crazy things because there's no NFL tape on him. And so it's going to take a couple of weeks to know if Tannehill's going to come back. And I really hope not, for not just the sake of bingo, but for the sake of seeing young stars develop in the league.
yep, I don't really have any bingo updates. A lot of mine left are just end of year stuff. I don't think the Ravens wide receiver is going to suffer a season ending injury, but that could happen any week. And then Michael Thomas playing in 10 games is likely. He's played in 8 straight now. So he would have to play in 2 of the next 10, or 2 of the next 9, sorry, in
Yeah.
order for that to happen. And I see that happening. So the 8-game winning streak for a non undefeated team, that I had my eye on the Chiefs for that, and they just dropped one.
Mm,
So
yeah.
that's not looking super likely. But who knows? Maybe the Eagles finish out the year strong, and there's still 8 games left. So if anybody now goes on an 8-game win streak, that's that bingo piece. I've actually thought about scrapping the bingo segment and turning it into a bold prediction segment where just if something happens, we'll talk about it, but we won't unless something does. because basically all the ones we have
Yeah,
left
we
are
could.
bold
We've got
predictions.
some bold ones left.
But I think that's just about all I got on bingo. If that's all you got, we can move into the
I think switching it
stocks.
to the bold predictions would be good nearing that playoff push era. So give it a couple more weeks and then it's
Yeah.
playoff push and we start predicting like okay who's going to be making it and follow those teams and then um, just other various stats as we near like the end of the year when we have a clearer picture on things.
I think next season when we do this, we'll probably have like 3 season-long bold predictions, and then every week we'll have a small bold prediction for the week. I think that'll be a better segment than bingo. Just
Yeah,
because when we do bingo, if it's too obvious, it's done by mid-season, and if it's not too obvious, then we're never going to get anything right. So,
yeah. Bingo was it it was good conceived. It wasn't good execution on us by making very very goofy bingo cards,
yeah.
very outlandish, very record breaking, etc.
I've got a stock move to make, so if we can get into stocks, I would
Yeah,
like to do that. It is only one move, and it is going to be selling my share of the Bengals stock. So, coming into this week, we had a lot of things happen, right? We had the Bengals win, the Jags win, the Chargers win, and the Panthers win, which were my 4 stocks. So all of them won, all of them increased. And just looking ahead, the Jags are on bye. I'm not going to sell them yet. If I sell them, it'll be next week after their bye week. But coming out of their bye week, they are playing, who was it? The 49ers. And
49ers.
I want to see how the 49ers are also on bye this week. But I want to see if Debo comes back and if Brock Purdy enters concussion protocol or if anything happens with Brock Purdy where something comes out that he's now fully healthy after not being healthy. Then I'll think about selling them. I might keep them. But going forward, they've got a stretch of games that are winnable, but their next 4 are going to be tough. It's the 49ers, and then it's 2 division matchups with the Titans and Texans, and then it's the Bengals. So it's just a tough stretch of 4 games where they could pick up 2, but they could drop 2 or they could drop all 4, and I wouldn't be too shocked. So that's not a stock I think I'll be holding on to for very long, but I'll at least hold on to them through their bye week just to, shout them out for beating the Steelers and making me happy on that because I was talking about that last time. And then the the Chargers won, and I like their upcoming schedule of this week being the Jets, the next week being the Lions, which I could see them taking, I could see them dropping, all depending on how strong they are. If you want to take over for a second, I'm going to mute.
Uh, in regards to my stock moves, we have the Texans lost, Rams lost, Bears lost, uh, Bengals won, uh, Panthers lost or bye week lost. Um,
Panthers won, bitch.
I thought that was last week. I'm gonna keep it a buck. I was looking at the wrong week schedule. Uh, I was 100% thinking that the Panthers won last week and lost this week. They've won this week. My bad. Uh, so my value is up on the Panthers there, and then the Giants with a really, really big stinker of a loss that we already spoke on. So all of my stocks are down. I'm not looking to sell when I'm down, and Panthers can only lose so much value. So I'm going to be holding on to my Panthers after their first win. And the Bengals are certainly someone I would be looking at, especially with their upcoming being. I mean, we've gone over it. Um, the Bills next week, and that's one that I'm like up and down on them. But after that, they play the Texans. After that, they play the Ravens, which I mean, divisional on Thursday Night Football. That will be a showdown to be sure. But I'm gonna rock with them. I just saw Joe Burr uh, play vintage Joe Burr, so I'm gonna just rock with all my stocks. Make no moves here. I will not double down on my Panthers stock despite having the money to do so. I'll keep that 150 in the bank.
The Chargers upcoming games, they're winnable. I think at least this week they're winnable. So I'm definitely going to hold on to them there. And then the Panthers, I was thinking about selling them. I texted in our group chat immediately after they won. I was like, Panthers won. I'm selling stock, baby. They picked one up. But this week they play the Colts, and that's another game that I feel like they might be able to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a little bit of thinking here, and
You do that.
if they win, they go from being worth 150 to being worth 250. And if they lose, they go from being worth 150 to being worth 125. So it's either a loss of $25, but still a gain on my initial investment of 100 per share, or it's a gain of a lot because it's an extra 100 per share when right now I'm only making 50 per share. So the incentive for me to hold on to them is a little bit higher. And I think that if they do win this week, which again is something I don't really think will happen, but it could, then I'll probably sell them. But again, week 10, go to Chicago, play the Bears, and that's another
Oh,
game that they
Bears.
could take. But I think by week 11, they will definitely be sold. They're playing the Cowboys in week 11, and I don't think that's a game that they'll win.
I'm
So
gonna be riding them through that.
I might dump some off. I might, you know, keep on keeping on with them. But right now, I'm not selling the Panthers stock just because these games are so winnable and the losses are not. Like if they take two losses or if they take a loss, I'm still up on my initial investment. So the only move I'm going to make is going to be selling that Bengals stock. So I no longer have a share of Bengals stock, but I have 575 in the bank. And my total net worth is up. It's at 2675. And another thing I want to point out, the last thing, stock market is fully open now. We can own up to 5 shares of each team. So you only have one of each, and you've already decided not to pick up any more. But I could pick up more Panthers if I wanted to. I don't want to, but I could do it. But yeah, I think I'm gonna just go into the next week with Jags, Chargers, and Panthers, and an extra 575 in the bank account. And I think that can take us on into the pick'ems if you're ready for that.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna be the one to open up our pick'ems here. Um, on Thursday Night Football, we have the Titans and we have the Steelers. And um it's a 50-50 really. I mean, it as we see, it depends on who the refs pick to win, who the refs have in fantasy and all of that. But uh, I I think Will Levis will not nearly have as good of a performance because there's that tape out on him. But I do think that they come away with that win. So I have the Titans over the Steelers, winning at Acrisure. What a dumb state.
Heinz Field. At
Remote
Heinz
that.
Field, they're winning at
At
Heinz.
Heinz Field, yes. Loyalty. Next up on the docket, we have the Dolphins and Chiefs, and this one hurts, but not really, because I'm going to be picking the Dolphins here. I think we've seen falters from both, and yeah, it was a flu game, make excuses, but the Chiefs offense just hasn't been there the entire season. So when you're hitting them against each other, I could see the Dolphins being the winner here. Did I freeze anywhere in there?
Not enough to worry me.
Cool. All right. Next up is the Vikings and Falcons. I have the Falcons winning this one at home. It's not a knock on Jaron Hall. Just the fact of it's a new guy stepping up. It's not Kirk. Kirk has been willing this team to close games and some close wins, and their defense has not been doing them many favors. I think that the Falcons, despite the fact that they're the Falcons, hopefully win this one at home because, as we saw, the Desmond Ritter streak was broken, but he had a real good one going. Next up is the Ravens playing the Seahawks at home. I think the Ravens walk away with this one. Next up is Browns Cardinals. This one is like the biggest real gap in out of the entire schedule here in terms of skill and talent and record. But I'm going to be taking the Browns. Shocking. No, absolutely nobody. Next up is the Rams versus Packers at
Lambeau.
Lambeau. I wanted to say LaShawn. I was like, that ain't it.
Shady. The Rams are playing in Shady.
Shady.
Sean McCoy.
I have the Rams here, and I have them as my lock over the Packers. And it's a little scary. It's a little sketchy.
It's sketchy with Matt Stafford being possibly hurt and out.
It's
And
a
Brett
it's a
Rippon
little
going.
sketchy with some with that. But if I'll keep walking you through these picks that I have, but there's very few that are cut and dry. Um, I have the Texans beating the Bucks in Houston. I have the Patriots walking away victorious against the now tanking for Caleb Williams Commanders. Um, the Saints and Bears is another interesting one where, I mean, it could go either way, but I ain't gonna really bet on Bears. Well, they do have they now have pass rush, I guess.
Yeah.
This whole week is like this. This
Yeah,
entire
it's
week,
every
making
single
any
game
pick.
is like
So
I could see it going. I actually had the exact opposite of all of your picks at one point. So I was like, wow, okay, maybe I need to rethink
we're
things a little
really
bit.
going.
So
Uh,
I did swap some around as you were going through, as you were explaining yourself. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. You know what? I
yeah,
like that. That makes sense. That checks out. And so
I I could change the Rams lock. I think I will leave it, but a conditional lock where if Stafford is not starting the game, I don't care if he doesn't play the whole thing, but if he doesn't start for the team, I will be moving it, and you'll find out who will be the next guy up for that. So I will pick the Saints over the Bears here, just kind of fingers crossed on that, because who knows which way that goes. I'm gonna pick the Colts to beat the Panthers here. I will be picking the Raiders over the Giants in what will probably be the worst game of the week. Um, Cowboys Eagles might be the best game of the week,
it's
and
very
that's
possible.
fingers crossed as well because I mean that could have been said for last week, and the Cowboys laid a smackdown. Um,
Yeah.
so we got Bengals Bills up next. I'm going to be picking Eagles for that matchup. Uh, it's at home. I feel like they kind of got some momentum going under them with the way that their offense is going. So despite the fact that the Cowboys are having some real good defensive showings, um, I'm going to be taking the Eagles in their kind of ground and pound offense there. Bengals Bills, another close one. I'm taking Joe Burrow. I'm that Josh Allen hater
You
through
are
and through.
confirmed.
Uh,
I'm gonna buy you a Josh Allen
confirmed.
jersey.
I mean, I'd never wear it, but
All right,
you could do it,
here
I
we go.
guess.
Here
If
we
it's
go.
on sale for 20 cents, get it. It'll
All
be
right,
worth it.
all right, all right, all right. Real quick, if Josh Allen wins MVP ever in his career, I am buying you a Josh Allen jersey, and you are wearing it for the
I have
entire
to wear it.
season of franchise tagged after that season. So when he wins MVP, the
That's a
next year
wager.
you're wearing the Josh Allen jersey for the full franchise tagged season. All
I'll meet you in the middle
no,
where I will wear it all of postseason. So he'll win MVP
but awards
and
aren't announced
all of
until
the
Super
next.
Bowl.
I realize that. But I'll wear it that postseason. I'll wear it for the Super Bowl episodes, all that. I will wear the entire off-season video creations. But I'm not wearing it for the season. I
All
froze.
right, deal, deal, deal.
Okay. I caught you up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice.
I'll take that deal. I'll. I don't think Josh Allen's winning MVP anytime soon, so I'll probably be saving myself $200 on that jersey. But
Yeah.
you know,
You got time to save up for it, don't worry.
I'll put aside twenty
Um
bucks every paycheck, and if he wins at the end of the season, I'll have money for it. All right, woo.
mhm. And then my final pick is Chargers Jets. This one's scary because the
Yeah.
Jets just keep winning the ones you don't expect them to. But
Well, you expected
I
them to
gotta
win
go.
last week, and they were kind of a shit show. So
It was really rough, yeah, admittedly. Um, I'm gonna take the Chargers. I'm really scared taking the Chargers. That would be my lock if it's not the Rams. It's
okay,
another tentative one, but that's because
because
every freaking matchup is a very sketchy matchup.
that's my lock. So I don't know if you want to adjust
Oh,
that at all.
let's hope Stafford's healthy. That's what
Um,
I gotta go with. It's not my first go-to.
so I'll run through mine. Titans Steelers. I did switch it from Steelers to Titans after I realized that Mayo Man would be starting. Indeed,
Oh,
I think he adds a
man.
new dimension to that team that Ryan Tannehill just didn't have. Dolphins Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are going to bounce back in this one. I like the Dolphins. I think that they probably will win, but I just can't pick against the Chiefs. I can't bring myself to do it. In every game where they're supposed to lose, they pull it out. It doesn't make any sense to me. But betting against Patrick Mahomes is something I don't think I'll ever do again. Week 2, I picked the Jags over the Chiefs, and the Chiefs won, and that was the last time I didn't pick the Chiefs. So I'm going to keep that up. Vikings Falcons. I did initially have Vikings. I think that there's a lack of there will be a lack of chemistry between Jaron Hall and the receivers. As I mean, freaking Kirk Cousins played with that receiving room for several years, and so I don't know if they're going to be as in sync. But I also think that Jaron Hall is going to do pretty well. If not, Josh Dobbs will do pretty well. So we'll see that. And then obviously the Falcons are tough to bet on because, they suck. And then Seahawks at Ravens. I've actually got the Seahawks in this one. I think that their defense will stifle the Ravens a little bit. And I think that that's enough to make me kind of bet on the Seahawks. And I think that the addition of Leonard Williams is going to plug up the middle of the defensive line. And I think that Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant and Jamal Adams and whoever else is their corner aside from Kobe Bryant, I can't remember right now, but I think that secondary is really good, and they're going to just overwhelm the Ravens and their lack of super talented weapons. Cardinals at Browns. I'm taking the Browns, but I could see the Cardinals winning this. That's why this is not my lock. I considered it, but because I don't think I've locked the Browns before. I haven't. So I could do that, but I could also see the Cardinals winning it, and it would be a conditional lock. If Kyler Murray plays, I think he's beating the Browns because he's not. He might play, he might not. He probably won't, but whatever happens, I still think the Browns win, but I wouldn't lock it if Kyler Murray's playing. Rams Packers. I do have the Rams. Even with a half healthy Matt Stafford, the Packers have looked abysmal this year, so I'll go ahead and take the Rams in that one. Bucks at Texans. I've got Texans. Commanders at Patriots. I'm going with the Patriots. In toss-up games with my team, I'll take my team. Bears at Saints. I'm taking the Saints at home. I think that they did pretty well against, who was it that we saw them play?
Thursday Night Football, or
Yeah, Jags Saints. They did pretty well against the Jags, who I think are a really strong team, and so I think that they're gonna beat the Bears. And then obviously it's a Justin Fields-less Bears, so it's a Tyson Bagent-led team against a solid defense in the Saints. So I think that it's gonna go to the Saints in New Orleans. Colts at Panthers. I said that the Panthers might be able to take this one. I do think the Colts are gonna win. It's a really strong running game. Gardner Minshew's probably the best backup quarterback in the league, unless there's somebody I'm just blatantly missing. And I don't know if the Colts drop this one to the 1-7 or 1-6 Panthers. And then Giants Raiders. I'll take the Raiders in this one. I don't want to, but I will. I could see it going either way. But if I will say this, if Danny Dimes goes, I'd probably lean Giants. If Tommy DeVito goes, I'd probably lean Raiders. But that defensive
yeah,
line, Max Crosby, is going to be a nightmare for Tommy DeVito if he does play. And for Daniel Jones if he does play. So
yeah, it doesn't change.
and then I think that because the Raiders didn't trade Devontae, he's going to go for 10, 200, and 4 touchdowns next week. So I think it's literally
Get
just
him
going to be
rock.
Jimmy G, throw it to Devontae and throw it accurately this time, and that's going to be their entire game plan. Cowboys at Eagles, another one that's split. I could see it going either way, but I am going to take the 7-1 Eagles here. I think they're on too hot of a streak
Yeah,
to be ended by a team that lost to the Cardinals. People
we
forget,
we
but
will pick against the Cowboys every week. It feels
if
like.
possible, yes. And then Bills Bengals. It's so tough. It's so goddamn tough. And I think the Bills have a lot to play for in this one. Last time they met up, DeMar Hamlin and such. So I think that the Bills are going to want to win this one. They're going to want to take this one. I don't think they're going to be able to. I think they're going to be a little bit overwhelmed by the Bengals offense, and I think the Bengals take it. But that's another one that I could see going either way. And then my lock of the week, Chargers at Jets. I'm taking the Chargers in this one and as my lock. I think that Justin Herbert's going to eviscerate the Jets. And I think the refs want Justin Herbert to beat the Jets, and so it'll happen.
Okay. So a quick recap because I just realized I went back. I wasn't even thinking about this. My lock on the Rams would be the first time I've locked the Rams, so that streak would keep going. It would
Oh,
also keep the streak of us locking different people.
my what I was going to say about that, because I did look back to see if I'd locked the Chargers. I have. It was incorrect. So that's why mine is a caveat where I'm
Mm,
locking a team that I have locked before, but not correctly. So
mm.
I'm gonna. That's why I was like between that one and the Eagles, but I locked the Eagles last week, and I don't feel strongly about any other one. I could go with the Browns. I could do it. I think if Clayton Tune goes, the Browns are gonna win that one. But
I have another a new caveat to my Chargers lock, um, or rather my Rams lock. Our predictions very similar. Last time they felt this similar, we went 6-7. I did at least. We did not have a good week. We both lost on our record. So new caveat: if Stafford does not start in that week in this game against the Packers, my lock is going to be on the Chargers Jets game, but I'm going to be locking the Jets to go right up head to head against you.
okay, you know what? I'm ending this whole debacle. My lock is no longer on the Chargers because I don't want to have that as a
Ah,
caveat. It's going to the
fine.
Browns. I'm locking the Browns,
You
and
just don't want to put your money where your mouth is.
that is in hopes that the Browns lose. I hope this lock is incorrect. I hope that after this week I am 6-3 in the locks. But Miles Garrett
Mm.
is going to murder Clayton Tune. So that's
No
my
need to
two
worry
cents on
about
it.
that. All right. This has been a very long recording process with a lot of technical difficulties.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Um,
so. Just for reference, whatever the final runtime of the video is, we're over an hour and a half right now recording, and the final runtime will probably be around 45 minutes to an hour, just because of
we've
how many
been
issues we've had.
we've been
So
almost 2 hours going. So
yeah, I paused the
yeah,
recording
this is
for a while in the middle of it, but we've been doing this for a minute. But
arduous task for sure.
with our pick'ems and locks out of the way, that's kind of it. Again, ending the episode, and this is how it always goes. But let us know your if man, we can't do
My
this without.
sleep deprived, crazy, and just emotionless face with peace signs up.
Yeah, so let us know your locks, your predictions in the comments. Let us know, Matt. We didn't talk about your issue enough, but we
Get out
were
of here.
we were
We'll
having
we'll
a
talk about
dis.
next week.
Actually, let's just touch on that real quick. We were having a disagreement in the group chat about the Chase Young trade, and he was like, "It's stupid. It doesn't fix their problems." And I was like, "Yeah, it doesn't have to. It
Here's
wasn't a trade
here's
to fix your
my
problems."
counter. Here's my really in-depth counter to that. It's a compensatory pick. They got him for free. You just got Chase Young for free.
They got him because D'Amico Ryans is the Texans head coach.
Yeah.
That is why they
Yeah,
got
yeah,
Chase Young.
right.
So it's not a trade to fix the franchise and to get everybody perfect again and to make Brock Purdy great. It's not. It never was. It's a trade to make
Can't
your
heal
defense scary.
concussions.
Yeah. It's a trade to make your defense really scary, really good, and it's a cheap ass trade at that. So that is my final 2 cents on it. Matt, you're incorrect. If you did this podcast with us, maybe you would know better. But
Yeah, maybe you'd have a
unfortunately,
voice on this
you
podcast.
don't.
You don't.
Yeah, let us know again in the comments any suggestions you have, any bold predictions. We'll use those. Join our Discord, yell at us in there and such, and we'll
Yeah, as
see
much as
y'all.
possible, actually.
We'll see y'all next week for week 10 and the predictions there. Shout out Mayo Man. Keep drinking your coffee, and
Oh,
we'll see y'all next
disgusting.
time.
Don't remind me. Deuces.
Deuces.